He's gonna go. He's gonna fight me. He's a big monkey. He thinks he's awesome.
Hey everybody, it's me, Undead Viking. I'm here to show a game to you. It's called Forged in Steel, and this is a game that is going to be published by Nightworks, a company that published one of my favorite games called Dark Horse. And while I am not going to be likely a playable character in Forged in Steel like I was in Dark Horse, I'm still having a lot of fun with this game, mostly because it scratches a really good itch for me. It scratches kind of historical setting, but also like it combines like a real time, a real period and location from like this is 1890 and the late 1890s to the early 1900s, and like a real historical part of what's going on. And actually, like some of the cards you play actually have historical things that actually happened in Pueblo, Colorado, which is where this game is located. And I'm pointing at the game board right now; it's in front of me, but you can't see it obviously, but you will very soon. Basically what the game is that each person is kind of an entrepreneur in Pueblo, Colorado, which, and I'm not a big, well, I am kind of a big history buff, but I didn't know a lot about this until after I played the game. Basically, Pueblo, Colorado became kind of known as the, like, Pittsburgh of the West, I guess, during this period of time, and they had a very burgeoning area of mining and factories and what have you. And each person basically takes a role where they are trying to like further themselves and further their influence in the area, but also they're building up the city of Pueblo, Colorado. And along the way, you'll be having elections for different roles. Like you get elected to be the mayor, but then there's other different roles that you can have running the city. You will be tearing down other people's buildings and putting up your own, and doing all kinds of different card play and things like that to really mess with people. And it is an area control game, and I have some of my favorite games ever are area control games, and so I was really excited to play this game. I have played it several times with my gaming group, and we love it. We love the player interaction, we love the kind of cutthroat nature of it, and the gotcha kind of aspect, and also it's just one of those games that it actually has, like, lots of games have you planning ahead, but this one has a really cool mechanism where you're actually like reserving cards for later in the last round of the game, and I'll show that when I show you how to play the game. But it's something I really enjoy about this game. So let me show you, as always, how to play Forged in Steel, and then we'll come back here and I'll tell you exactly what I think about the game. Alright, cool, let's do this. This is Forged in Steel. Now, before I start telling you how to play the game, keep in mind this is a prototype, and while the game might look very much like this once it is published, what you see in front of you may or may not be indicative of the final result. Alright, so Forged in Steel, as I said, is a game about building up the city of Pueblo, Colorado in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Mostly this game is card driven. There's these 3 decks of cards over there you can see. Those are from the different eras, and obviously like the backs of the cards would actually say probably 1890, 1900, and 1910, but mine are sleeved so you can't really tell that, but those are the 3 decks. You do have a 4-sided die that is used for a couple of things, notably when you place mines, or if you are the Black Hand Mafia and you get to destroy some buildings, you roll that die to see how many buildings you get to destroy, or when you make a mine, you get to roll the die and see how many points it's worth. But for the most part, the game is all strategy driven. That's pretty much like the only real random element, other than obviously the cards that you have in your hand. I've gone ahead and set up the game. I randomized the turn order like you normally do. Whoever is last in turn order becomes the city mayor. You can see these are the elected official locations over there. And then you choose those one by one after the fact. So in a 4-player game, there's 5 different positions. You have to fill all of them. The city mayor will also not only be the city mayor, but they'll also get to pick another spot. And I just kind of randomly place those down. Also, at the very beginning of the game, you place the City Hall building there, in the location marked for the City Hall, and then the mayor gets to place the first like house, and so they place it on this Pueblo location. That's like the mayor's house, I guess. And then each person then, in kind of turn order, they place a house, and then the mayor then gets to place these white cubes, and that means that those are the like city-owned lots, if you will. And that's important because to build a house, or a mansion, or a factory, or a hospital, or a commercial building, or what have you, the buildings have to be first zoned by placing one of these cubes. And either there have to be city cubes, like those white ones, or each player actually gets cubes as well that they will place down on the board, and they'll zone those. Now, I will get more into that, but an important thing to mention is that whenever a cube is replaced with a building, if it is the city cube that's replaced, the city gains victory points. And there's the victory point track here, this little track that goes around. And the city gains victory points, and then those are awarded to the mayor after the turn, after the era is over. So that's why it's important to be the mayor. And plus, you get to kind of pick some things at the beginning of the game. And if you replace a player cube, if it is somebody else's, because somebody else can zone it, but then you can take it, on your turn you could like then go, okay, thank you, I'm going to build a building there. That person gets a victory point for that. If you build on your own cubes, you don't get any victory points for that. But, that's an important little thing to keep in mind. It's one of the actual really important things about the game. I love area control games, and this one has that kind of neat little thing going on, like a switch or a change up, if you will, to the game itself. But you'll also notice that there's these little white cubes over here that are tracking these different locations. Event cards will cause these tracks, the cubes, to move up on these tracks, and then what that does is it makes certain things more valuable. You can earn some small little bits of victory points with the mines and the placing of the cubes and whatever, but really you score the vast majority of victory points at the end of an era, when you you award the victory points from each location, depending on like how many buildings you have, or how many factories you have, or mines you have, or commercial buildings you have, and things like that. And so there's a lot. So that's like you kind of have like little tiny nibbles of victory points throughout the turn, or the era, if you will, and then you kind of cash in at the end. And it is an exponential process because the more buildings that you have and the more stuff that you have, like you keep building on that, and it keeps increasing. You'll notice that some of these locations here, they obviously have a spot that's for a factory. When you place a factory in those locations, and in this case, the factories are represented by these large black cubes. You just kind of place them like that, and you take up both spots. And then if you own the factory, you place your own cube on top of it, like so, and that shows that you own the factory. The factories themselves, these spots can be. Factories themselves can only be built on these spots, but those spots can be used for normal buildings. It's just you have to make sure that if you are going to build a factory, you have to be able to build them in those locations. You may have also noticed that there's these spots that have these buildings that have the two. Those are mansions. Mansions are kind of special because normally you have to build off of like the cityscape. You slowly expand from the spot, but mansions can be placed by where they are. And each player is considered to be kind of an entrepreneur or an elected official or something like that, and they get to place a mansion at the beginning of the game, which I've done, obviously. I've placed them kind of spread out. And mansions obviously have like take up the two spots, but they're worth more victory points, and if you can build things next to them, and so on and so forth. There's all these different connections, like with commercial buildings and things like that, that'll earn you victory points when you place them near those locations. Also, just before I actually finally show you some of the mechanisms of the game, you'll notice that there are these bridges that cross these things. When you build a like location, like so, like that. Now, at that point, now you're able to, like, somebody's able to put like a cube there, and then somebody else later in the next turn, could place one like that. You can't connect like this. There has to be the bridge to connect the two spots next to each other, and that's how you kind of branch out. Obviously, since the mansions have been placed in those different locations, you can, however, like on your turn, you can put a I'm going to claim that lot, and so on and so forth like that. The mansions, like I said, kind of break that rule. So that is kind of like the whole ground base ideas of the game as far as what goes on. But let me show you exactly how the game is played. And like I said, I'm not going to show you each and every step. I'm just going to kind of try to give you an overview here. But each person will get 8 cards to start with. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm not going to actually show each and every person's cards. I'm just going to grab these 8 cards, and I'm going to use those to show you how the game is played. When you get these 8 cards, one of the things that will happen is that you will have these, and then you'll look through them, and you'll decide which cards you're going to hold on to, and you're going to actually take 2 cards, and you're going to put them in your reserve. And those cards, and you'll pick another 2 cards the next time in the next era, and you'll put those in reserve as well. And then you get to use those cards in the 3rd era. So you kind of have to have a little bit of like a plotting, if you will, like cards that you think are going to be valuable when the 3rd era actually comes along. I should also mention that each player will also choose one of these cards and discard it as well. So that will leave you with a 5-card hand. Then, and actually I did this a little bit out of order, so I do apologize for that. At this point, then you would actually go through the process of choosing those different elected officials over there. The reason for that is that whoever is the tax official actually then gets to draw a number of cards equal to the number of players, in this case 4. They would draw 4 cards off the top. They'll look at these 4 cards, and don't worry, I'll show you how the cards work here in a second. But they'll look at these 4 cards, they'll take one, and then they'll hand the other cards to somebody else who hasn't gotten the cards yet. It doesn't have to be like to your left or to your right, it could be across the table, whatever. And then that person will look at the 3 cards that are available, they'll take one, they'll hand them to one person who still hasn't, and that person will finally take one, then give the 4th person, or if the 3 people or 2, you know how as far as that goes. And so you get one more card. And so if you got a bad hand of cards, and you were like the first person to pick, like maybe you'd pick the tax official as being, you know, you get to choose that first card of the 4 that you draw. And so then you would have that option. So I apologize for doing that a little out of turn, but you know, that's how that works. Now, each one of these cards has like a name of the card and a picture and description or whatever. And it's kind of neat that these are historical and what have you. But basically, you have the era that's on the bottom here. Like that says 1890. And like here, I'll just draw a card here so you can see. So here's a card, and then that is, you know, 1900, and the other cards have 1910. You will have one of these cards, and they have like abilities here. It's like move 2 houses to a different neighborhood, replace those houses with your ownership cubes. Pretty straightforward. You play the card in your turn, and you get to do that. And this is what this is how the game works. Basically, you'll be using these cards, and the idea is that you're trying to strengthen your position and build up your, you know, domain, if you will, or your empire, if you want to call it that. And but the cards have this number up the top, and that is the like point value of the card. It's called muscle in the game, but we just refer to it as, you know, how many points it's worth. So like obviously it has a range there, 3, 4, 5, and you can either choose to use it for the points that are up in this corner, or you can use it for the event that's on the card. And then some events have a thing where it's like, it says build a commercial building, score victory points equal to the Unrest Level. The Unrest Level is located here. It starts off at a 1. I didn't put it there. When you build mines, and if you roll like a 3 or a 4, you will, you know, increase the unrest level, because the mine, when you build it, you roll a 4-sided, and if like, oh, it's worth 4 points, but it increases the unrest level. I guess theoretically, like maybe because of the influx of the silver mines or whatever, it's causing a bad element or what have you. And so if the unrest level ever actually gets up to 8, at that point, it will actually cause a riot. And I'll explain that in a little bit. And actually, I just realized you don't use one of those. What am I talking about? When you cause unrest, you actually put one of your cubes on there, showing that you're causing the unrest by either an event that you've used, or because of the fact that when immigrants show up to Pueblo, if you're unable to place the immigrant housing, you'll end up putting spots here. And that's something I'll explain also here in just a little bit. But when that happens, like I said, I'll explain the riots there. But if you notice in the labor, you'd score victory points equal to that. So it's something that works hand in hand. So maybe this is a card you'd hold on to, and you'd save, because right now, there isn't a lot of unrest, and so maybe you're going to hold on to it and wait until if you use it in the third era, maybe unrest, you can maybe plan on getting it higher, and you can score more points with it. But I'm showing this to you because this says headline. When an opponent builds a factory, you score 1 victory point. Score victory points equal to the unrest level during end of era scoring. Now, if you play a card that has a headline, and it is the first headline card, you get to place it in this lead headline location. And when you do that, whatever player does that, you place your cube on it to show that you did that, because when the era is over, you're going to get to score those points. Later on, if somebody plays a card that has a headline, let's just say this Mother Lode here, you place it in this one, just headlines. Now the difference between this one and, let's say, Purple did that one, and they place it on there, and so that, and then they have that going on as far as the headline. Now later on, however, somebody might play another card with a headline, like this Pinkerton Agency, and you're going to replace that one then, and you're going to get rid of this one, and then whatever player put that down, they take that over. You can't ever get rid of the lead headline once it's on there, but so it's kind of nice if you get that on there, and because nobody can mess with it. But if you can get your headline card on there, you can still score that, or whatever special ability it gives, as far as that's concerned. Now I showed you this card. I wanted to show you the fact that it has a response there on the bottom. So it's you may cancel a hired guns and thugs event. Now a response card is if somebody plays an event. I don't think I have that card in my hand, so I can't really show you that card. But basically, if I remember correctly, the hired guns and thugs allows you to hurt other people, just to mess with them a little bit. And so, if you have this card, you can say, "I'm going to stop you. I'm going to play the card. I'm going to cancel that." And it's the only time you can actually play something out of turn. And then when it comes to your turn, when it gets, then you have to basically discard this card, and that is your turn on that. If you cancel out somebody else's event that they wanted to place, they still get to do, they can use their card for the points that it's worth, but they can't use the event to hurt you. So those are the 3 different things that the cards do: the headlines, the event, and the response. And then, of course, the points. Now, you might be wondering finally, well, what do you use the points for? And points are basically used to either claim lots, or build houses, or build other buildings, or if you have enough points, it costs 4 points to do it, you can actually steal somebody's house. So if you had 4 points, you can just move in and just say, you know what, Purple, I want that place, and you just come in and you take it and you replace it. However, that causes unrest. If you do that, you actually have to place one of your cubes over here on the unrest level. The other ones are pretty straightforward. If you want to buy a mine, you just take your cube and put it on a mine. Once the mines are used up, they're done. And then, as I said before, you roll the d4. Okay, it was worth 3 points, and in case of 3 points, you'd move your 3 points up on the spot. But since Purple just rolled 3 points, and it is a 3 or 4 mine, they'd have to place a cube on the unrest level. If you want to place one of your cubes on a lot, you have to build it off of an already existing building that's been claimed. So you go like this. You can say, okay, I'm going to build a lot, and then that costs 1 to do that. If you want to build a house, you have to go ahead, and it costs 1 as well, but you can't build it on a spot that's already been claimed. So green couldn't go ahead and, I'm going to build a lot, and then I'm going to build a house. You have to actually wait until your next turn before you'd actually do that. So, but green could go over here to one of these locations, a city, and replace that with their green, like so. So that is building a house also costs 1 point. If you want to build a commercial building, which is these guys, commercial buildings, you have to, once again, you have to be able to claim a spot, like so. And then that costs 3, and then you place your cube on top, like that. Now there are some like different rules, like some special rules as far as you know, building a commercial building. Actually, I did that incorrectly. I wouldn't be able to actually do what I just did. A commercial building can only be built next to a block that is completely owned. So in this situation, you wouldn't be able to do it. However, if, like, say there were 2 houses, here, let me get a house instead of a cube, like so, and there was a cube like that, you could build a commercial building in that location because it is adjacent to a block that is completely filled with housing. And so then, if Green built that, he'd then put a cube on top like so. So, I mean, and that is how that process works. If you want, you can like take over like with the 4 points, you can take that over just like you take over a house as well. Factories, you have to, as I said, has to be a location that has a factory on it. It has to have cubes on it, like so. It could be 2 separate cubes like that. And then, like, if Purple wanted to build, they replace those. These 2 people get the points, you know, because the fact that Purple is building on their lot that they owned. And they go ahead and place it on there. And to build a factory, it costs 2 points to build up a factory. And so you can't save the points that you get off the card. You can't say, well, I've got 5, but I can only use 4. I'll save 1 till next round. You can't do that. You have to use it all up, or you're done. Some event cards will let you build civic buildings, which are these, and hospitals and parks, and those you just have to be, you know, they come from having an event that allows you to do it. Let me see if I have one here. Yeah, like this one. It says right here. Schools. You know, place a civic building. Each opponent does not own any buildings in this neighborhood adds 1 cube to the unrest track. Place 2 city cubes in this neighborhood. So, you know, that's another way to get unrest and what have you and build that up. So what happens is that each person takes their turn, plays a card, and it goes around the table, and each person will play their card for whatever purpose they want, and they'll build up the city, build up the locations, whatever, until finally everybody will then have used up all of their cards, and then you will get to the end of the era, if you will. However, there's a couple things you have to process before you can actually finish off that turn and go on to the next to the 1900s, from 1890 to 1900, then to 1910. The first thing you have to do is you have to do immigration, and there's this little track here, and it's kind of tough to see, but 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 plus. That's the number of factories and commercial buildings that have been placed on the map. That's total, all of them. And if there's 1 through 5, each person is going to have to play 1 immigrant. If it's 6 through 10, 2, or 11 or higher, it's 3. And so you have to put immigrant houses. The immigrant official is the first person that goes and gets to do this. They place whatever this tells them to, 1, 2, or 3. They have to place those on any lot with an ownership cube. And the next player goes, and then the next player goes. Now, as you can probably guess, there's a really good chance you're not going to have any of these cubes. The cubes that are going to allow you to build a house. If you can't build the house, you have to go ahead and add your cube to the unrest level, because basically you have this influx of people that are looking for housing, and you can't give them a place to live. And because you're not able to do that, you have to add your cube to that. And the unrest phase, and why that's important, is when there is a riot, and I'll explain a riot here right now, whoever had placed the most cubes on this track is the riot target. And so they're the one that is going to actually be affected, well, at least at the very beginning, they're going to be affected by the riot to begin with, because the malcontents within the city are going to they think you're the cause of the fact that they have no jobs or no housing or what have you. And so the instigator, the riot instigator, which would be the person with the least number of cubes on that, you roll a d4, and if it's 1900 you add +1, if it's 1910 you add +2. In this case I rolled a 2. And what the riot instigator will do is they'll pick a spot that the riot target has a building, and they will then destroy that building. And then for every number that they roll, in this case 2, it'd only be 1 more, but if I rolled a 4, it'd be 3 more. You build an orthogonal path of buildings that get destroyed because of this fact. And so the big thing is that you can't go across an unoccupied lot. So you can actually burn out the riot before it ends. So like, let's say there was like a house. Oh, that's not a house. I apologize. Let's put a house here, and let's say red was the riot target. The person, if they didn't want any of their stuff destroyed, they could go like destroy this one, and destroy that one, and these are gone now. But there's no other place, and they maybe have one left to go. There's nowhere else for the riot to go at that point, and so there's nothing else to destroy, and so it actually ends before. And that is a completely valid move, and it actually can sometimes work very well in somebody's benefit as well. The big thing to remember with the rule, besides that rule, there's one other rule you really need to remember as far as the riot goes. And that is that only houses, factories, and commercial buildings can be destroyed. You can't destroy hospitals or civic buildings. So, that's also something you could kind of wedge yourself into a situation where maybe there'd only be a civic building left to destroy, and you can't destroy that as well. After that is done, you go to the Black Hand Mafia phase, and whoever is the person who runs the Black Hand Mafia, they pick a block, which would be one of these, even one of these as well, and they roll a die. And they get to destroy as many houses, and they have to destroy as many houses as they roll. So they probably shouldn't pick a spot that they have spot in. So if they pick this one, they destroy 4, you destroy all 4 of those houses. And the Black Hand Mafia just, I don't know why they want to destroy things, but it's just, it's crime that infects the area, if you will. So after you get done with that, now you're actually going to do your process of scoring. And for scoring, you just you count total number of mines to start with, and then whoever total mines, whoever has the customs official down here, you get victory points due to the number of mines. If there's 1 to 3, you get 2, 4 to 7 is 4, 8 to 11 is 6, and 12, all 12 mines are taken, then he gets 9 victory points. Something that at the very beginning of the game, probably not worth a lot of victory points, but towards the end, that's a really good one to have, because it's like just tons of free victory points, because people take those mines pretty quickly. You then, depending on the mining track, you score points equaling to the number of mines times the value that's on this mining track. So 1, 2, 3, or 4. Events can cause this to increase. And so like if you had 3 mines over there, this is on 3, you get 9 victory points for that. Industry track, same deal. You get victory points for each factory you own, and then times each factory is worth X. So you have 3 factories and they're worth 4. You'd have 12 victory points for that. And then commercial, same deal, but with commercial, they're 2, 3, 4, 5, so they're worth more. And then for each adjacent mansion or opponent's mansion, you score a bonus to the commercial building. You score 2 victory points for your own mansion, or 1 bonus point for every opponent's mansion. And then for each adjacent civic building, hospital, or park, you get an extra 1. Now, I'm telling you this, and you're probably not going to remember, but it does get a little fiddly when it comes to scoring. Once you've played the game a few times, you get it, and it kind of rolls pretty easily. Finally, if you had any headline cards over here, the special things, you score those as well. And then you total up all those total points, and then you put those on the scoring track. Now you finally go to the election phase, and that's when you start running the ballots for each one of the locations. And the ballots are pretty easy. You total up the number of votes, Depending upon, each neighbor gets one vote and one additional vote per civic building that's in that particular neighborhood. And each house or commercial building provides one ballot, a mansion provides 2 ballots, and factories and mines don't count for anything unless a card event says otherwise. So you total up whoever gets like the most ballots in each one. So like in this case, like red gets 3, you know, green would get 4, blue 2, and purple would get 5. You know, so in that case, 5 votes would go to purple, and then they would get the 1 vote plus the 1 for the civic building, and they get 2 total votes. And then so you do that for each location. Obviously there'd be more stuff in like as the game is progressing, and you get those votes. Whoever gets the most votes becomes the mayor for the next turn, and they immediately score any total any city points that have been gained from getting rid of these city cubes at that point. And then in turn order, and if you tie, then if you tie for the most overall votes, the player that received the votes from the neighborhood from the highest total ballots. So if like they won one with like if there was one place that had a total of like 11 ballots to 9 ballots, you win. If you're still tied after that, you just go by turn order. And then you reduce the city score to 0, so that doesn't climb after that. So after you award those points, it goes down to 0. And then you do the turn order. The election results, the mayor ends up going last. The person who got the least number of votes goes first, and then you figure out turn order. And if there's still a tie there, you just go by what the turn order was before. And then in turn order, each person picks an official, like the official phase, and then you repeat that until, once again, like I said, all rolls are taken. And then you get ready, and you've used up your cards, so you deal out 8 new cards from the new era, and then you just go to the next turn, next era, and you go through that. You go to the next era, 1910, and then the game ends at that point. After the voting in the era of 1910, then the game is over. You don't go through the process of the picking the officials or anything like that. As soon as you figure out who the mayor is and who gets those points from being the mayor, the game ends, total up the points, and whoever has the most points, obviously, is the winner. Now, that's a lot of rules and a lot of stuff, and I really appreciate you sticking with me and watching that. But I love deeper, heavier games like this, and the player interaction, whatever. But I'll tell you more about all of that in my conclusion, which I'll do right now. Hey everybody, I'm back. So, if I ever get around to doing like a top 30 games of all time for myself or something like that, or whatever, top 20, top 100, top 10, what have you, and it's something I've always thought about doing, and I haven't gotten around to doing it. 2 games that will most likely be very high on my list will be Tammany Hall will be one, and Urban Sprawl will be another one. And I was really surprised, unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say surprised, but I found myself really enjoying it, and I also saw, like, bits and pieces of those games kind of representing themselves in this one as well. You have, the area control aspect of both of those games. You have, the placing of the houses and what have you, the buildings, like you find in Urban Sprawl. You have, the voting for to become the mayor, like that you find in both of those games and things like that. And what both of those games have is they have the players constantly in conflict. Fighting over spaces, fighting over land. Playing different cards that have different abilities that mess with things. And so I like games like that. I've said many times that while I can play a game like Caverna, where I'm building my little farm and cave or whatever. I call them building a garden game. I can play a game where I'm trying to make my cute little garden, and I say that kind of dispassionately, if you will. But those games can be a lot of fun, and I enjoy them for what they are. But games in my wheelhouse are the ones where, as I've said, I can leave my garden, I can walk over to your garden, I can start messing, I can start pulling plants up, and I can start salting the earth, and I can start messing with your plants. And there's something so wonderful about any game where not only am I destroying what you're doing, but it's making me better. And I like games like that. I like games that give me that opportunity. Because, you know, I understand why people might not really like that kind of game, or they might shy away from that type of game. But I have a group of people. My gaming group is very conflict oriented, I guess. You know, and not that we're like arguing or yelling at each other, but we just enjoy that type of game: the wheeling, the dealing, the negotiation, and so there's all kinds of, you know, weird things going on in the back of our heads. Is he going to attack me? Is he going to leave me alone? You know, can I convince him to, you know, pay attention to this guy, and you know, so on and so forth. And so I knew as soon as I started playing Forged in Steel the very first time after I read the rules, this was just going to be in my gaming group's wheelhouse. It was going to be in my wheelhouse as well, and you know, and I was going to have a good time, and of course I did. You know, if I had to tell you, you know, I always try to say, you know, if you like this type of game, you'll like that. If you like games with interactivity, if you like area control games, if you like games with a historical basis, I think you're really going to like Forged in Steel, and I think you definitely should check it out. It definitely has a lot of things going on that I like. I really like the idea that you kind of build your hand of cards for the last round as the game progresses. You're putting those extra cards away. And so, you know, you kind of have like an idea of a final goal or final plan at the end, and you're working towards that. I really like that aspect. It's one of the cool little things in the game that I really enjoy. I mean, not that that's the only thing, but that's something that really stuck out for me that I dug about the game. You know, and it's I've played lots of games where you know, you just get your hand of cards. Okay, now do something with these cards, but you know, and it's so weird. I can't think of another game that has this aspect where it's like at the beginning, the very first turn, I got to pick a couple of cards, and then I put them down there, and then when I get my next cards, then you have the cards in your hand. You got to figure out which ones you're going to set aside and how they're going to interact with those. And maybe right now in this turn, you know, those cards will work really well for the situation that I'm in, and maybe I shouldn't use those. But you know, where am I going to be, you know, when we get to the last round of the game? So, you know, it has that really cool decision factor going on with that, and I like that part. So, but I mean, there's all kinds of things I like about the game. I like, as I said, the teeth that you have when you're playing, you know, the riots, and you know, just like the person being able to control the riots and just kind of like, you know, Pac-Man, you know, munching on people's houses and destroying them, stuff like that, and it you know, definitely maintains a very, very high level of interactivity and a high level of intensity as well throughout the game. So there you go, Forged in Steel. If you have any questions about it, please by all means ask away. I'll try to answer those to the best of my ability. Thank you as always for taking the time to watch this video. I greatly appreciate it, and until next time, you have yourself one heck of an awesome day. Alright, bye-bye now.